Welcome to the captivating realm of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss any of our exciting new stories. Enjoy the journey.
John Harris gazed out of his living room window, his weathered hands clutching a lukewarm cup of coffee. The tranquil suburban street unfolded before him, unchanging and predictable. At the age of 50, he had settled into a routine that increasingly felt like a rut. The clock on the mantel ticked steadily, a constant reminder of time slipping away. With a sigh, John set down his mug and grabbed his well-worn gardening gloves. At least the roses needed some attention. The summer sun beat down on his thinning hair as he knelt in the dirt. He had just started pruning when a moving truck rolled down the street, halting at the house next door. Curious, John leaned over the fence. New neighbors. He muttered to himself. It had been years since anyone had moved to Maple Drive. As he watched, movers began unloading peculiar furniture and strange, pulsating orbs, causing his brow to furrow in confusion. Just then, a figure emerged from the truck that left John speechless. She was tall, easily over 6 feet, with limbs that seemed too long and graceful to belong to a human. But it was her skin that truly captivated him, it shimmered and glowed with an ethereal light. When she turned, John caught a glimpse of her eyes, deep violet and mesmerizing, as if they could see right through him. He ducked behind the fence, his heart racing. An alien, an actual extraterrestrial, had just moved in next door. "John, are you okay over there?" He jumped at the sound of his elderly neighbor's voice. Mrs. Peterson peered at him from her porch, concern etched on her face. "I'm fine, just fine," John called back weakly. "Did you see?" Mrs. Peterson nodded, her eyes wide with astonishment. "I've never seen anything like it. Do you think we should call someone?" Before John could respond, a melodic voice floated over the fence. "Hello, neighbors. I'm Tnai. I hope I'm not disturbing anyone with my arrival." John slowly stood, coming face to face with his new alien neighbor. Up close, her beauty was even more striking, her skin seemed to pulse with an inner light, casting a soft glow around her. "Hello," John stammered. "I'm John. Welcome to the neighborhood," Tnai said, her violet eyes crinkling as she smiled. "Thank you, John. I look forward to getting to know you better." There was something in her tone, a hint of suggestion that made John's cheeks flush. Clearing his throat, he asked, "Where exactly are you from, if you don't mind me asking?" "Oh, a planet you've probably never heard of, Eliza. It's quite far from here," Tnai replied casually, as if she were discussing a move from one state to another, rather than from another solar system. Mrs. Peterson had made her way over, staring in awe at Tnai. "Good Lord," she murmured. "I never thought I'd see the day." Tnai turned her dazzling smile toward the older woman. "And you are?" "Margaret Peterson. I baked you a welcome pie," Mrs. Peterson said faintly, extending a dish. John hadn't noticed before how thoughtful Tnai was. "How kind!" she exclaimed, reaching for the pie. As she did, her fingers brushed against John's arm, sending a jolt of electricity between them that made him gasp. Tnai's eyes locked onto his, a knowing expression crossing her face. "I truly hope we become good friends, John," she purred. John swallowed hard, unsure of how to respond. This was certainly not how he had expected his day to unfold when he woke up that morning. As the days went by, John found himself continually distracted by his new neighbor. He would catch glimpses of Tnai through his window. Her graceful figure moving around her yard or lounging on her porch. More than once, he looked up to find her watching him with those enchanting violet eyes. Their interactions began small, waves over the fence, brief greetings as they collected their mail. But soon, Tnai started seeking John out more frequently. One afternoon, while John was watering his garden, Tnai appeared at the fence. "Your flowers are lovely," she said, her voice like music. "On Isa, we have plants that sing when they bloom. Perhaps I could show you sometime." John nearly dropped the hose. That sounds incredible, he managed. I'd love that. Tnai's smile broadened. Excellent. It's a date then. Before John could process her words, she was gone, leaving him flustered and intrigued. The following day, John was trimming his hedges when he heard a commotion from Tnai's yard. Peering over the fence, he saw her struggling with a large, pulsating plant. Need a hand? He called out before he could stop himself. Tnai looked up, relief evident on her face. Oh, John, yes please. This lumina bush is being quite stubborn. John made his way into her yard, eyes widening at the alien flora surrounding him. The plant Tnai was grappling with seemed to glow from within, its leaves shimmering with an iridescent sheen. What exactly do you need me to do? John asked, approaching cautiously. Tnai gestured to a spot behind the plant. If you could just hold it steady while I replant it, that would be wonderful. John nodded and moved into position. As he gripped the plant's trunk, a warm tingling sensation spread through his hands. He gasped, nearly letting go. Oh, don't mind that, Tnai said with a laugh. It's just saying hello. John watched in amazement as Tnai deftly maneuvered the plant into a new pot. Her movements were fluid, almost hypnotic, and he found himself captivated by the play of light across her skin. There we go, Tnai said triumphantly. She turned to John, her violet eyes sparkling. Thank you for your help. I don't know what I would do without such a kind neighbor. She stepped closer, and John caught a whiff of an intoxicating, otherworldly scent. His head swam. It was my pleasure, he said, his voice huskier than intended. Tnai's gaze lingered on him, a flicker of something primal in her eyes. Perhaps you'd like to stay for a drink? I have a beverage from my home world that I think you'd enjoy. John knew he should refuse. This entire situation was bizarre, potentially dangerous even. But something about Tnai drew him in, igniting his curiosity. I'd love to, he heard himself say. Tnai's smile was radiant. Wonderful. Come, let me show you inside. As John followed her into the house, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something far beyond his comprehension. The interior was a mix of earthly furnishings and alien technology. Orbs of light floated near the ceiling, casting a soft glow throughout the space. Make yourself comfortable, Tnai said, gesturing to a peculiar-looking couch that seemed to shift and mold itself to John's body as he sat. Tnai busied herself in what John assumed was the kitchen area, though it bore little resemblance to any kitchen he had ever seen. Strange, colorful liquids bubbled in transparent containers. So, Tnai, John began, trying to sound casual, what brings you to Earth, specifically to our little suburb? Tnai turned, a knowing smile on her face. Curiosity, mainly. Your planet has fascinated me for some time, and as for this neighborhood. Her eyes locked onto John's. Let's just say I had a feeling I'd find something interesting here. John's mouth went dry before he could respond. Tnai returned with 2 glasses filled with a shimmering opalescent liquid. Here we are, she said, handing him a glass. A special brew from Aliso. I think you'll find it quite stimulating. John took a cautious sip, the liquid dancing on his tongue and leaving a tingling sensation in its wake. Heat spread through his body, and suddenly the room felt much warmer. This is remarkable, he said, his voice slightly strained. Tnai beamed. I'm so glad you like it. You know, John, I've been meaning to ask you something. She leaned in close, her scent enveloping him. John felt dizzy, whether from the drink or Tnai's proximity. He couldn't tell. Yes, he managed to croak out. I was wondering if you might show me around town sometime. Everything here is so new and exciting, and I'd love to experience it with someone who knows the area. The request seemed innocent enough, but there was an underlying tone to Tnai's words that John couldn't quite decipher. He found himself nodding before he fully processed the question. Great! Tnai exclaimed, clapping her hands together, causing ripples of light to dance across her skin. It's a date then. There was that word again, date. John's head spun. Was he reading too much into this? Surely an alien wouldn't be interested in him that way. And even if she was, wasn't that crossing some sort of interplanetary boundary? Sensing his internal conflict, Tnai placed a hand on his arm. Another jolt of electricity passed between them, stronger this time. John, she said softly, I hope I'm not being too forward. It's just, there's something about you that drew me in. I felt it the moment I saw you. John stared into her violet eyes, feeling as though he could fall into them. I felt it too, he admitted. But Tnai, this is all so strange. New. Exciting, she finished for him. He nodded, unable to articulate his thoughts. Tnai's smile became mischievous. Those are the best kinds of experiences, don't you think? The ones that shake us out of our routines and make us feel alive again. Her words hit John like a physical force. How long had it been since he had truly felt alive? Since he had taken a risk and embraced the unknown. Before he could respond, a loud crash from outside startled them both. John rushed to the window, Tnai following closely behind. In the yard, Tnai's plants appeared to have come alive. They writhed and pulsed, growing at an alarming rate. One had already broken through the fence separating their properties. Oh my! Tnai exclaimed. It seems the atmospheric conditions here are having quite an effect on my garden. John stared in astonishment at the chaotic scene before him. Is this normal? Tnai bit her lip, a gesture that was oddly human. Not exactly. You see, John, there's something I should probably tell you, but before she could finish, a scream pierced the air. Mrs. Peterson stood at the edge of her yard, staring in horror. As she stared at the alien plants overtaking her beloved petunias, she exclaimed, "What on earth is going on?" John glanced from Mrs. Peterson to T, then back to the chaos in the yard. His once predictable life had been flipped upside down in mere days, and strangely, he found himself enjoying it. T's hand found his, her touch igniting sparks across his skin. Maybe we should go calm the neighbors, she suggested, adding, John, we have much to talk about. Stepping into the yard to face the escalating frenzy. John felt more alive than he had in years. Whatever was unfolding, whatever T was about to unveil, he was prepared for it. His days of mundane routine were behind him, a new chapter was beginning, one filled with intrigue, excitement, and the captivating alien woman beside him. What had seemed like an unchanging suburban street just that morning now buzzed with a thrilling energy John had never known. As they approached Mrs. Peterson, the elderly woman's shrieks reached a new intensity. The alien flora had fully engulfed her prized petunias, their glowing tendrils pulsating with an otherworldly rhythm. Mrs. Peterson, please try to calm down, John said, striving to keep his voice steady. We'll sort this out. T stepped forward, her skin radiating a brilliant glow. I apologize for the disturbance, Mrs. Peterson. My plants are merely adapting to their new environment. Mrs. Peterson's eyes widened in disbelief as she took in T's ethereal form. You're not from here, are you? John couldn't help but chuckle at the understatement. That's putting it mildly, T replied with a smile, her violet eyes sparkling. I hail from a planet called Aliso, far from here, and it seems my garden is causing unexpected disruptions in your lovely neighborhood. Just then, nearby streetlight flickered and exploded, showering sparks. Instinctively, John pulled T closer, his arm wrapping around her waist. The contact sending jolts of electricity through him. This is unacceptable. Mrs. Peterson cried. I'll call the authorities. Wait, John urged, surprising himself with the urgency of his voice. He turned to T. Can you control this? Can you make it stop? T bit her lip, a gesture that was becoming frustratingly endearing. I'm not certain. This has never happened before, but I'll try. She closed her eyes, her face focused and intense. The air around them began to vibrate, and John felt a strange tingling sensation enveloping his skin. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the writhing plants started to recede. "It's working," Mrs. Peterson gasped. As the alien flora pulled back, John noticed something extraordinary. The ground where T's plants had flourished was now teeming with life. Flowers of every hue erupted at a rapid pace, filling the air with a captivating fragrance. "Incredible," John murmured, unable to tear his gaze away from the transformation. T opened her eyes, relief and exhaustion etched on her face. "There, that should stabilize things for now," Mrs. Peterson, seemingly entranced by the new blooms, stepped closer to inspect them. "I've never seen anything like this. They're stunning." John turned to T, curiosity overriding his caution. "What's really happening here, T?" She met his gaze, a whirl of emotions flickering across her luminescent features. "It's complicated, John. My kind experiences things differently than humans do," John settled beside her, trying to maintain a respectful distance. "Different how?" T's violet eyes held his, and he felt a wave of something pulse between them. "We have cycles, intense periods of need." John's throat went dry. "Need?" She nodded, a faint blush spreading across her cheeks. "On my world, we call it the joining. It's when we seek out a compatible partner, and the urge becomes overwhelming," realization hit John. "And you're feeling this joining now?" T's gaze fell to her hands. "Yes, it's why I came to Earth, thinking a change might help me manage it." John's mind raced. "But what about the plants and lights? What does that have to do with your cycle?" T chuckled softly. "Everything on Eliso is interconnected, our emotions. Our physical states, they shape the world around us. Here on Earth, that connection seems even stronger." To emphasize her point, a lamp nearby flickered and brightened, casting T in a nearly angelic glow. John leaned in closer, captivated despite himself. "So every time you feel something, it impacts your surroundings?" T nodded, her eyes never leaving his. "Yes, and lately, John, I've been feeling quite a lot." The air crackled with electricity. John edged closer, drawn in by an unexplainable force. "T," he whispered, "what are you feeling right now?" She reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek, igniting a spark through his entire being. "Let me show you." Before John could respond, T pressed her lips against his. The world erupted in a frenzy of sensation. John felt as if he were falling and soaring at once, every nerve ending alive with pleasure. When they finally broke apart, both panting for breath, John saw that every plant in his home had burst into bloom. The air was thick with an enchanting fragrance, and the walls seemed to pulse with a gentle pink light. "Wow," John breathed, grappling for coherence. "That was just the beginning," T replied, her eyes radiating an intensity that thrilled and frightened him. As the days rolled on, John found himself swept into a whirlwind of emotion and chaos. T's presence in his life was a force of nature, unpredictable and exhilarating. She would appear at his door at all hours, sometimes to share an unusual alien delicacy, other times simply to enjoy his company. One evening, as they sat in John's backyard stargazing, T suddenly sat upright, her skin glowing with vibrant energy. "John," she said, her voice quivering with excitement, "I want to teach you something, a word from my language." John raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Okay, I'm ready. What's the word?" T leaned in close, her breath warm against his ear. "Janner," she whispered. As the alien syllable slipped from her lips, John felt a warm wave wash over him. The grass beneath them began to sway, and tiny glowing particles filled the air. "What does it mean?" John asked, his voice thick. T's violet eyes locked onto his. "It means, my heart's desire." John's pulse quickened. T, but before he could finish, a loud crash from next door interrupted them. They rushed to the fence to find Mrs. Peterson's cat, Mr. Whiskers, glowing bright neon blue and floating 3 feet off the ground. "Oh dear," T murmured. "It appears my emotions are affecting more than just plant life now." As they worked to coax the frightened feline back down, John couldn't help but wonder what other surprises T's presence would bring, and, more importantly, if he was ready for them. The following week, even more unexplained phenomena hit their quiet suburb. Streetlights flickered and danced in T's presence, while local weather patterns shifted dramatically, delivering unseasonable warmth and spontaneous light displays in the night sky. John felt torn between fascination and concern. On one hand, T's impact on him was undeniable. He felt more alive than he had in years, his senses heightened and his body thrumming with newfound energy. But on the other hand, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were tampering with forces beyond their control. One afternoon, while John attempted to trim his wildly overgrown hedges, he heard a commotion from T's yard. Peering over the fence, he saw her surrounded by floating orbs of water. "T," he called, his voice strained with concern. "What's happening?" She turned, a blend of delight and frustration on her face. "I'm trying to contain my emotions, but they keep overflowing." "What do you mean?" John stepped closer, intrigued. "I thought you had this under control." T sighed, running a hand through her sparkling hair. "I thought so too, but the more I'm with you, the stronger my feelings grow." As she spoke, one of the orbs drifted toward John, hovering before him, shimmering in a rainbow of colors. He reached out, mesmerized, and the moment his fingers brushed its surface, a surge of energy coursed through him. In that instant, John was flooded with sensations: joy, longing, a deep sense of belonging. The connection he felt with T was tangible. And he realized that this was more than mere attraction, it was a profound bond transcending their differences. The orbs suddenly popped, showering John with sparkling droplets. "This is incredible," he exclaimed, wide-eyed with wonder. But then his expression shifted as he surveyed the chaos around them. "We need to figure out how to control this. We can't let it spiral out of control." T's eyes softened as she approached him, her presence soothing. "You're right, John. But I believe embracing these feelings is the key, not suppressing them." John met her gaze, his heart racing. "What does embracing them look like?" T stepped even closer, her face inches from his. "It means being honest about our feelings for one another. It means being brave." John swallowed hard. This was a moment that could change everything. "What if we embraced it together?" he suggested, his voice steadied as he took her hand. "What if we let it happen?" T's eyes sparkled with hope and uncertainty. "Are you sure, John? I don't want to overwhelm you." He tightened his grip on her hand. "I've never been more certain of anything." As they stood together, fingers intertwined, John felt the very fabric of reality shift around them. The world faded into the background as they leaned in closer, the air thick with anticipation. Just as their lips met once more, a brilliant flash of light enveloped them, and John felt a rush of sensations, everything they had shared. Every emotion, every moment, cascading over him like a wave. In that instant, John realized that this connection, wild, beautiful, chaotic, was something he had never dared to dream of. It was exhilarating and terrifying, but above all, it was real. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it with T by his side. As the last remnants of light faded, they stood together, hearts racing and breaths mingling in the air. A new chapter awaited them, filled with wonder and discovery, and John couldn't wait to see where it would lead. As John prepared to confront the crowd, he felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Let me take care of this," T said, her voice calm yet assertive. Stepping forward, her skin emanated a soft, soothing glow. As she approached the protesters, flowers blossomed at her feet, their delightful fragrance filling the air. "Good afternoon," T greeted, her melodious voice effortlessly rising above the murmurs of the crowd. "I know you have concerns regarding my presence here, and I would like to address them." The protesters fell silent, captivated by T's otherworldly beauty. She spoke to them about peace, cultural exchange, and the advantages her people's knowledge could bring to Earth. As she continued, the tension in the air lifted, replaced by wonder and curiosity. By the end of her speech, the protesters had lowered their signs, and several even asked for her autograph. John watched in awe, his heart swelling with pride and affection for this remarkable being who had chosen him as her partner. As the weeks went by, John and T's bond deepened. They spent countless hours pushing the boundaries of their connection, discovering new methods of communication and sharing experiences. T taught John to harness the energy fields around him, starting with the simple act of making flowers bloom at will. One evening, while lying in the backyard and gazing at the stars, T suddenly sat up, her skin pulsing with a vibrant light. "John," she said, her voice tinged with excitement and a hint of nervousness, "I have something important to tell you." He propped himself up on his elbows, concern furrowing his brow. "What is it, love?" T took his hand and placed it gently on her abdomen. "Can you feel it?" she whispered. Initially, John felt nothing, but then he sensed it, a tiny spark of energy pulsing in rhythm with T's glow. His eyes widened in shock. "T, are you?" She nodded, tears of joy cascading down her radiant cheeks. "We're going to have a baby, John. A perfect blend of our two species." The news overwhelmed John like a tidal wave of emotions. Joy, fear, excitement, and awe surged through him in quick succession. He embraced T tightly, kissing her deeply as the garden erupted in a riot of bioluminescent blooms. The following months were a whirlwind of preparation and adjustment. T's pregnancy progressed at a much faster rate than a human's, her body undergoing changes that left John both fascinated and concerned. They dedicated countless hours to research, consulting with the few trusted scientists aware of T's true nature, while preparing their home for their interspecies child. As T's due date neared, the entire neighborhood seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Even Mrs. Peterson joined in, knitting tiny glow-in-the-dark booties for the baby. The night T went into labor, the sky above their house exploded into a stunning aurora visible for miles. John held her hand, admiring the strength and grace she exhibited while bringing their child into the world. With a final push and a burst of blinding light, their daughter was born. She was perfect, a tiny glowing bundle with John's dark hair and T's violet eyes. As John cradled her for the first time, he felt a love so profound that it brought tears to his eyes. "What should we name her?" T asked, her voice weary but filled with joy. John gazed at their daughter as she opened her eyes and looked up at him with a wisdom that seemed far beyond her few minutes of life. "How about Aurora?" he proposed, inspired by the lights that danced in the sky at her birth. T smiled, reaching out to stroke their daughter's cheek. "Aurora," she echoed. "It's perfect." As the days passed, John and T adjusted to their new lives as parents. Aurora grew at an astonishing pace, exhibiting abilities that were a unique blend of her human and Illicen heritage. She could bloom flowers with a touch, just like her mother, but she also showed a keen curiosity for Earth's technology, frequently dismantling John's gadgets to explore how they functioned. One sunny afternoon, while sitting in their garden watching Aurora play among the alien flora, John turned to T with a smile. "You know," he said, "when you first moved in next door, I never imagined we would end up here, an interspecies family raising a child who might change the course of human-alien relations." T leaned against him, her skin radiating contentment. "Are you happy, John?" Truly, he surveyed the garden, a harmonious mix of earth and Illicen plants. He reflected on the love he shared with T and the joy of watching their daughter grow. He remembered the man he once was, lonely and resigned to a life of quiet routine, and marveled at his transformation. "Happier than I ever thought possible," he replied, pulling her in for a kiss. As their lips met, Aurora giggled, clapping her tiny hands. A shower of luminescent petals cascaded around them, and in that moment, John realized that this beautiful, chaotic, otherworldly life was precisely where he belonged. The story concludes with John and T seated in their transformed garden, Aurora playing at their feet. They discuss the future and the challenges they will face as their daughter grows, considering the potential for her to bridge their two worlds. John holds T's hand, marveling at the changes in his life. "You know," he says with a smile, "when I wished for excitement in my life, I never expected it to come in the form of an alien wife and a half-illicit daughter." T laughs, her voice musical. "Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it?" As the sun sets, casting a warm glow over their little family, John realizes that his journey is far from over. In fact, it is just beginning. With T by his side and Aurora representing the future, he knows they will face any challenges together. As the first stars twinkle in the twilight sky, John feels a wave of peace and excitement wash over him. His once predictable and mundane life has turned into an adventure beyond his wildest dreams, and he wouldn't change it for anything. Dear readers, the tale of John and T transcends mere sci-fi romance. It serves as a reminder that life is full of surprises and opportunities that can arise when least expected. Like John, many of us sometimes feel trapped in routine, as though our best days are behind us. Yet this story illustrates that new beginnings, love, and adventures can come at any age and in the most unforeseen ways. It encourages us to embrace new experiences, even if they seem daunting or strange at first. T entered John's life and turned his world upside down, but it was precisely these changes that brought him genuine happiness and added meaning to his days. This narrative also highlights the importance of accepting differences in a world where fear of the unknown often breeds conflict. The union of John and T symbolizes the potential for harmony and understanding between vastly different cultures. Let this story inspire you to remain open to life's surprises. Remember, sometimes the most incredible adventures start with a simple hello to a neighbor next door. Who knows? Perhaps your own T or your own John is already waiting to meet you around the corner. It's never too late to begin a new chapter in your life. Be courageous, be open, and may your life shine as brightly and with as much wonder as John and T's garden.